Welcome to Standing on Business with Eric Foss. I'm your host, Eric Foss. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Standing on Business with Eric Foss. I'm your host, Eric Foss. Guys, today, as promised, I got a banger for you. Hang in there till the end. Huge names in this one. What I did today is I went into Mark Ryder, rest in peace. Obviously, he's passed away in prison, so his compassionate releases, his appeals, everything got shot down. And actually, a federal judge was urging to let him out at the end, but they did not do it. Mark should have passed away at home. So, I glanced through something real quick, and I'm not going to get into his compassionate release. I'm going to get into his actual appeal and the names that come up in this thing and the background, and it clears up. Well, look, we're going to do this together. You know how I do this, guys. So let's get started. All right. United States of America versus appealee Mark Ryder, Angelo Ruggiero, quack quack, Vito Lacano, Raymond Clark, a.k.a. Ramar, Leonard Rollick, a.k.a. Petey, a.k.a. Peter Rollick, a.k.a. Peter Ifill, Timmy Smith, a.k.a. Heartbeat, and Alfred Dix. These are all the appellants, so they were all co-defendants. They're all in the same appeal, okay? Now, here's what Mark's appealing on this, and he got shot down. Mark Ryder appeals an order of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, Richard Owen Judge, denying Ryder's motion to dismiss a predicate act contained in the substantive racketeering charge and referred to in a conspiracy charge on the ground that prosecution was barred by the double jeopardy clause of the United States Constitution. Ryder alleges that the same conspiracy was charged in a 1983 indictment in the Southern District of New York, which Judge Mary Johnson Lowe ultimately dismissed, and in the 1986 indictment, which is the subject of an ongoing prosecution in the Eastern District of New York before Joseph McLaughlin Judge. We disagree and accordingly affirm the order. Basically, they shot this down. But we're not here today for that, because obviously we know what the situation is. Let's get into the background. Mark Ryder, over the past 6 years, he's been charged with criminal conduct in 3 separate indictments. The first, Ryder 1, charged him with 1 count of conspiracy to distribute heroin from January 1980 through April 28, 1983 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere in violation of 21 U.S.C. 846 code. United States versus Grant. The indictment named Thelma Grant. Now, this is going to get into something. You guys have probably heard that name before. This was Nickey Barnes' girl, drug dealer girl or whatever. Salvatore Corallo and Elizabeth Grant as Mark Ryder's co-conspirators. Thelma Grant was named in all 9 counts and charged with, among other things, conspiring with others to violate the federal narcotics laws and engaging in a continual criminal enterprise. Grant, a close friend of Leroy Nickey Barnes, was suspected of operating Barnes' massive heroin distribution business following his conviction on December 2nd, 1977. The government contended that in the summer of 1980, Barnes arranged through Herbert Sperling, we all know who Herbie Sperling is, with whom he was incarcerated in Marion, Illinois, for Ryder and Corallo to supply heroin to Grant. So basically what's happening is Herbie Sperling hooks up with Nickey Barnes in the joint. He's able to reach out to his side, Herbie's side, which would be the Mark and them, and hook them up with Nickey Barnes' side, which will be Thelma Grant, and get the heroin operation rolling. Okay. Grant pled guilty to all counts in the indictment, but denied in court that Ryder and Corallo were involved in the conspiracy. So she tried to clear Mark. She testified that she had 2 sources for the drugs sold to the undercover agent. The prosecution contend, however, that Ryder supplied heroin for several sales to an undercover agent who, posing as a former customer of Barnes, asked to purchase heroin from Grant in March of 1982. The evidence showed that Ryder met with Grant at a Manhattan restaurant on March 12, 1982, and that the next day Corallo delivered heroin to Grant for resale to the agent. On April 29, 1982, Grant told the undercover agent that her source was a Jew and an Italian. Now, Herbie Sperling is a Jew, and so is Mark. Now, this other guy is obviously Italian, so we don't know. It might not have been Mark. After the government presented its evidence against Mark Ryder, the district court entered a judgment of acquittal as to Ryder pursuant to federal criminal act or whatever. So, looks like they gave a judgment of acquittal to Mark in this one. So that's the first indictment. So Thelma Grant looks like she testified on people, but she cleared Mark, huh? Hey guys, calm down. Now this is Reader 2. This is Mark Ryder 2. In 1982, the FBI, this is another indictment, the FBI conducted a large-scale investigation of the activities of Angelo Ruggiero and his associates. Angelo Ruggiero is Quack Quack, for you guys who don't know. Very tight with John Gotti, wound up on the shelf with the gas pipe incident with that Heidel guy or whatever. In an application for a wiretap of Ruggiero's home, and if you guys remember Quack Quack, that's the reason why all these bugs got installed everywhere. In an application for the wiretap of Ruggiero's home, FBI Special Agent Donald McCormick submitted an affidavit to which he stated, CS1, this is a confidential informant or confidential source, stated that Ruggiero and John Gotti, they're talking about John Gotti Sr., approximately 1 year ago pretended to expel Mark Ryder from their crime crew because Ryder was continuing to handle and distribute narcotics in violation of the Gambino family edict prohibiting the conduct of narcotics trafficking. Basically, deal and die. Nothing less. CS1 stated that Ryder continues to deal in heroin and cocaine and is being funded by Ruggiero's and others. Now, I did talk to Mark, okay? I want to say something about that part right there. Mark wasn't getting, like people get it all confused, he wasn't getting dope off John Gotti, really wasn't getting it off Ruggiero. What it was Ruggiero's brother, he wound up dying or whatever, but he was a good plug. He was the real dude. So Mark used to deal with him. Mark told me that out of his own mouth, but you know I'm a liar. But anyway, a lot of people say, oh, it was John. But the part of them chased John Gotti and them chasing him was because of the heat. You know what I mean? So that's what being chased is, you know. Being put on the shelf's one thing, being chased is another thing, you know, and obviously being whacked is a whole nother thing. So, now here we go with another confidential source. Confidential source number 2. Now, I think one of these, maybe number 1 is Willie, but I don't know. Confidential source number 2 states that he has overheard a cryptic discussion between Eugene Gotti, Gene Gotti, and another concerning the fact that Mark Ryder is still working for Ruggiero. CS2 advised that he heard members of the Gotti Ruggiero crew state that Mark Ryder strictly handles narcotics for that crew. The investigation resulted in a multi-count indictment. Ryder 2, which charged Ryder and 10 co-defendants. So you got Mark, Angelo Ruggiero, Gene Gotti, Johnny Carniglia, Joseph Giuliano, Oscar Ansarian, Gerardo Sacasia. I'm not Lee Cole in this one, guys, but these are some tough names. Eddie Leno, William Robert Cistaro, Salvatore Greco, and Joseph, let me at least get that right, Joseph Lopresti, and an unindicted co-conspirator, Salvatore Ruggiero. Now, that's the brother. And he's probably unindicted because he's passed away at this point. I just ran across it. I told you I read this with you guys. I glance and then I read. Okay. So they're charged with unindicted co-conspirator Salvatore Ruggiero with conspiring in violation of 21 U.S.C. and 846 to distribute and possess with intent to distribute heroin in violation of 21 U.S.C. in the Eastern District of New York and elsewhere from February to June 1982. The indictment also charged Ryder's co-defendants with other narcotics offenses, racketeering, and obstruction of justice in violation of 18 U.S.C. and all them codes. I want to say something real quick about this heroin dealing. This isn't what you're thinking of today. This isn't some petty stuff. Now, back then, a good price. Hey, guys, come on. I'm sorry about that. Back then, a good price for a kilo of heroin would be about $250,000. You could actually wholesale it for $300,000. But now remember, back then, a kilo of real heroin was real heroin. It wasn't all this crazy stuff. So what they could do, they could take one of them kilos, make 20 kilos. It would put your dick in the dirt. You know what I'm saying? And not kill a bunch of people either. You know, some people OD, but it's not like today's crisis. Another reason why. Back then, they had real cut, bonita, quinine, stuff like that, which cost money. That cut used to cost money, like $400 for an ounce, stuff like that, or like 3 ounce, whatever it was. I wasn't a heroin dealer, but it was what you cut dough with. Nowadays, they're throwing pieces of Xanax and stuff and all. A key of heroin's $20,000. That's all fake. That's all the fentanyl. That's all the dangerous stuff that's going on now. So even though this was dangerous back then, it is 10 times more dangerous now, guys. Okay. The government's theory at trial will be that the delivery of heroin from Angelo Ruggiero to Mark Ryder was effectuated by Salvatore Greco through a pickup man and close associate of Mark Ryder, Salvatore Corallo, who had previously delivered an eighth a key of heroin for Mark Ryder to Thelma Grant on March 13th, 1982. Now, that just made my point. Thelma Grant was a pretty big dope dealer. She's working right for Nickey Barnes. She's only getting 4.5 ounces. Do you understand? So she's probably putting 20 ounces per ounce. You know, well, 36 per ounce, something like that. You know what I mean? So this is what I'm talking about. And it was still very good. This is what I'm talking about. There was big money in this stuff. And it goes fast. I mean, it goes in small amounts, just drug strips going, flowing, brrr, hitting in the hole, all that. So anyway, he filed the pretrial motion to dismiss the indictment on double jeopardy grounds. Okay, now I want to get down into this one because you guys have heard this story a lot, and this is the actual court documents. Trial commenced before Judge Castantino on June 1st, 1987. On September 2nd, 1987, Ruggiero made a telephone call from the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, to Ryder at Ryder's home, advising him that their associate, James Jackson, had been removed from the MCC. James Jackson is a black guy. I think his nickname was Gator. He wound up becoming a cooperator. I think he wound up getting whacked. Let's read more. So, basically, Quack Quack warns Mark that Jackson's cooperating. So, Mark was out on bail. Remember, September 7th, the trial was going on. So on September 8th, Mark got low. Mark's gone. So on September 8th, Mark failed to appear for trial. Law enforcement officers located him over 2 months later near Los Angeles, California, at a hearing held to decide whether Ryder's flight from the Eastern District could be admitted as a proof of consciousness of guilt. The government, apparently referring to James Jackson, stated Mr. Ryder became aware of somebody who could provide evidence of his narcotics dealings during the time frame of our indictment. And that so-called live witness who counsel is constantly telling the court does not exist could tie Mr. Mark Ryder into the conspiracy and does exist. Judge Castantino did not give a consciousness of guilt charge, and the evidence concerning Jackson's move from the MCC was not admitted at trial. So basically, the government was trying to pull, hey, since you ran or whatever. Now, I want to talk about something when Mark ran. Okay? When they caught Mark, this is a fact. This has been in a few things. They grilled Mark for hours. Like, put him in a room, kept coming in there, harassing him, trying to get him to flip on John Gotti Sr. Mark did not. But here's the bad thing about that. Well, not the bad thing about not cooperating, but here's something that's not cool about all that. The truth of the matter is, and this came out, and listen, you know I'm a Gotti guy, but we got to keep it real here. Gotti was going to have Ryder whacked because he thought that he would wind up flipping. So that was a bad judgment call on Gotti's part if that would have happened, because we see Sammy wound up flipping. Ryder stood strong. Happens like that sometimes, guys. You never know. You never know. Okay. After 8 months of trial, Judge Castantino declared a mistrial on the grounds of jury tampering and an insufficient number of jurors. Ryder and 9 of his co-defendants moved for an order barring their retrial on double jeopardy grounds, claiming there was no manifest necessity. Hey, please. There was no manifest necessity to declare a mistrial. Judge Joseph McLaughlin, who was assigned the case, denied the motion, and this court affirmed United States v. Ruggiero. Evidence at the aborted Ryder 2 trial included a recording of a June 13, 1982 conversation in which Ruggiero told Gotti that Ryder would receive a large quantity of heroin if he purchased it with cash. Now let me clarify something. Ruggiero is talking to Gene Gotti, not John Gotti. Hey! Come on, guys. Damn. Also omitted was the recording of a conversation that took place 5 days later in which Ruggiero and Gotti discussed the distribution to Ryder of a portion of 8 kilograms of heroin Ruggiero had obtained. So all right. Sorry about that. I'm sorry about that, guys. Dogs got a little out of hand. They're fine now. Okay. So we're on to that next conversation. Okay, let's go. Also omitted was the recording of a conversation that took place 5 days later in which Ruggiero and Gene Gotti discussed the distribution to Ryder of a portion of 8 kilograms of heroin Ruggiero had obtained. Okay, I'm figuring that that's a lot of bricks. Like I said, these things are $250 a piece. Okay, so you're talking a couple $1 million there. Now, I'm thinking that he wound up coming up with this from his brother, possibly. Maybe his brother was still around at this time. And well, here's Angelo Ruggiero talking. I'm trying to figure out. I'm all confused. I just picked up 8 things. Picked up 6 off them guys. On it, you can't understand. I'm gonna give 1 to Zeke tonight and 1 to Jew Boy. Gene Gotti says, you got 8? Ruggiero says 1 more, yeah. Gene Gotti can't understand what he says. So in other words, Jew Boy would be Mark because he's Jewish. Ruggiero took, so here's what it comes down to. Ruggiero took 2 off of Eddie. Jew Boy, this would, Ruggiero says, took 2 off Eddie. Jew Boy ordered 1 because, and then you can't, it's on the can't understand it. On June 23rd, 1982, FBI agents arrested co-defendants William Castaro and Salvatore Greco after observing Castaro give Greco $149,680 in return for 4 bags of heroin. FBI agents searching Greco found a business card with a notation indicating the sale of 8 kilograms, including 1 kilogram to M, and a card bearing Ryder's fingerprints and a notation called 6 p.m. Sal, 392-2585, which corresponded to Salvatore Carallo's telephone number. Now, that fingerprint. I know some dudes, this was coke. You know how you got the wrapper, the brick wrapper or whatever? They threw it out on the highway. Somebody turned it in or the police found it. They did fingerprints, wound up investigating them and busting them. So that's serious, that fingerprint stuff on packaging and stuff. That's why the police will come and take your trash and things like that. Okay, this is Ryder 3. This is his 3rd indictment. On February 17, 1987, a grand jury in the Southern District of New York returned the first of a series of indictments charging several defendants with participating in large-scale narcotics operations led by James Jackson. This is Curtis Jackson, remember, the cooperator. On February 23rd, 1988, the grand jury returned a 12th superseding indictment which charged Ryder with participating in a racketeering enterprise in violation with 18 U.S.C., you know the codes and all, with conspiring event, all that, blah, 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 blah. This is all heroin and stuff. Using the telephone to commit a felony, income tax evasion. A lot of that, when I go through that, it's just window dressing, you know. That stuff means nothing. The life sentence is coming from the serious stuff. Count 1 alleges 22 acts of racketeering, including an act of racketeering 9, which alleges that as part of a pattern of racketeering, Ryder, Ruggiero, and their co-defendants conspired to distribute and to possess with intent to distribute heroin from January 1st, 1980 to October 31st, 1987. That's a long investigation. In the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. Count 2, which alleges that Ryder conspired with others to violate the federal racketeering laws, incorporates by reference the act of racketeering set forth in Count 1. Okay. Okay, here we go. Now, we conclude that the double jeopardy clause does not bar prosecution on act of racketeering 9. So basically, dude, they write the rules. I've told you guys this. One day it's double jeopardy, next day it's not. So that didn't work. This is what they were trying to use as the overt act, which I guess was beat in court before. But let's get down to it because this is the exciting part. However, the only overt act in Ryder 1, which named Ryder, was a meeting between Ryder and Thelma Grant at a Manhattan cafe on March 12, 1982. In contrast, Ryder 3, which is the third indictment, see, that was the first one, charges that Ryder repeatedly distributed heroin from 1980 to 1987 in several states, with specific distributions taking place in the summer of 1986, November through December 1986, and June 1987. Ryder 3 also charged, here it is, that Ryder participated in 3 homicides. Although the conspiracy charge in Ryder 1 and the conspiracy of pattern or racketeering charge in Ryder 3 overlapped during the time frame of 1980 to 83, the Ryder 3 conspiracy continued for 4 years after the Grant conspiracy ended with Grant's guilty plea in 1983. Such time differences suggest that the offenses charged are not identical and that the later prosecution can withstand double jeopardy scrutiny. See United States versus this and all that stuff. The participants in the 2 conspiracies also differ. Ryder's name co-conspirators in Ryder 1 were Corello, Thelma Grant, Elizabeth Grant, while 3 involved the members of the Jackson organization. That's all this 2 separate. Basically, what Mark was trying to say is it's all one common scheme or plan, but I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't. Okay. Now I want to get down to this guy Jackson. Okay. Give me 1 second, guys, because I do think that one of them 3 homicides is Jackson. So we'll go down to here, the Jackson organization. And this is once again United States versus Ryder. It's going to have a lot of the same stuff, so I'm not going to go through it. Okay, that's the Grant indictment. Okay. This is his compassionate release. Okay, so I just want to see, I'm pretty sure it's going to talk about them unalivings in here, and I want to see if Gator was one of them. Okay. Here they get into in his we got to touch on this. I forgot all about this, but I know about this. William Bright. Okay. The government uses this. Now, Mark was not convicted of this. But basically, a quick history of it is, Mark had a son, Greg. Okay, Greg was messing around, selling weed or something like that. And the supposed rumor on the street is that Tommy Karate unalived Mark's son. They did him really bad. They did something, okay? But they took him out, okay? And Billy Bright was apparently one of the guys. Some people dispute that. You know, I'm not here for that. I'm just reading what this says. And I'm telling you what happened. So they were in Atlanta, and they were on the same compound. So Mark's in there with the guy who supposedly had something to do with unaliving his son. Okay, so we'll get into that. Concerning defendants' involvement in the events alleged in United States versus Stansel. Now, Stancil was the guy who actually unalived Billy Bright. Okay. Okay. Including the unaliving of William Bright. On October 19th, 2022, the government confirmed that after a week-long jury trial ending May 28, 1996, a jury had convicted a USP Atlanta inmate named Jack Edward Stancil of unaliving Bright. Another USP Atlanta inmate, Henry Benjamin Masters, was charged with conspiracy and pled guilty to unaliving in the second degree. At the trial, a USP inmate named Larry Lane Wilson, jailhouse rat, he was in the penitentiary too. They're everywhere, told you, testified that after the unaliving of Bright, Stancil asked Wilson to pass messages to Ryder in which Stancil demanded his share of the money from Ryder. Stancil confessed to Wilson that Stancil and Masters had unalived Bright to fulfill a contract from Ryder. Stancil told Wilson that motive for the unaliving was Ryder believed Bright had caused the death of Ryder's son, and that Ryder told Wilson that he had ordered the contract because Bright had unalived his boy. Now, let's get into that real quick. I know about that before the books and stuff like that. Mark was never charged with that. This other guy was. So like, just like when the John Gotti thing with the Aryans and stuff, certain things do come out there. Now, my opinion, did Mark have it done? I hope so. I mean, no disrespect to the passed away person's family, but I mean, I can't say if somebody unalived your child and you had an opportunity to get them hit. I mean, I think anybody would. But once again, he wasn't charged with that. But remember, this is all preponderance of the evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt when you're trying to get out on a compassionate release. They just, where there's smoke, there's fire type of thing. Okay. Applicable law. This is the now. I want to get into, so you got the jailhouse thing that went on. Now, I'm just going to flick down because this doesn't have it. Okay, I'm going to try to look up something different. Let me try this real quick. Just bear with me, guys. Here we go. Here's the talking about these unalivings that they put into Mark's case. Now, I don't know if Mark was convicted of the unalivings or they used them to enhance him, but I know he got life on the drug charges. Okay. This goes in a little bit more detail. Reiters' trial commenced on May 2nd, 1988. The evidence against him included testimony of numerous cooperating witnesses, including Leroy Nickey Barnes, there's James Jackson, James Gator Jackson, I said Curtis Jackson, who testified, among other things, that Ryder had supplied him with many kilograms of pure heroin, and that Ryder had personally ordered the unalivings of Beverly and Stephen Ash after learning that Nickey Barnes had begun to cooperate with authorities. So, okay, that's where I was. I thought Mark had Gator unalive. What it is, Gator wound up telling on Mark for trying to, or for getting these people unalived. Okay, now I want to say something about these unalivings. Yes, it's sad and everything like that, but all these people were players in the big game. You know, this wasn't no innocent people. Salvatore Corallo, who testified among other things, that is, so the Italian guy must have flipped too, that his responsibilities were to test, package heroin, weigh heroin, deliver kilogram quantities of heroin, and collect cash from the sales of the heroin dealers to Ryder. Vito Lacano or whatever, he testified among these guys are flipping like crazy, that he worked distributing the heroin for Mark, picking up money, setting up appointments, picking up the drugs and storing it over a period of years. And Russell Fleming, to who Vito Lacano delivered heroin for Ryder, and who Ryder ordered unalived after he learned that Fleming was cooperating. Okay. The testimony of these individuals was corroborated by diverse and overwhelming evidence from other sources, including heroin supplied by Ryder, which was seized from Russell Fleming upon his arrest. Surveillance report, telephone calls recorded by means of a wiretap on Ryder's phone, a telephone call recorded by Salvatore Corallo in which Ryder offered Corallo $30,000 to plead guilty in a pending heroin conspiracy prosecution. Another telephone call recorded by Corallo, so Corallo's recorded, Mark, in which Corallo and William Batista, is that Willie Boy Johnson, discussed the difficulties in working, no, that can't be him, I don't know, in working for Ryder. Evidence of Ryder's flight from New York upon learning that Jackson had begun to cooperate. Documents and witnesses attesting to Ryder's extravagant lifestyle and the purchase of luxury items with cash, and evidence that Ryder had a no-show job that he used as cover for narcotics trafficking. Mark was getting it, man. He was getting a lot of money. On August 25th, 1988, the jury convicted him and his co-defendants on all counts and found that each RICO predicate had been proven beyond a reasonable doubt on direct appeal, blah, 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 blah. So let's talk about this. This included a lot of names. Mark, I met Mark. He was cool. He liked to gamble and stuff like that. He was a drug dealer when he was on the streets. Very likable guy. I used to talk to him sometimes and stuff like that too. But as we see in here, these court documents clear some things up. Did John Gotti know Mark sold dope? Yeah. You think he knew his brother and him sold dope? Yeah. But he wasn't selling dope. His name came up on these tabs. Were they giving him money for other? I don't know. But the whole thing is this. They could not tie John Gotti into the heroin distribution. They just couldn't. Because believe me, that's who they wanted to tie into there. So that should a little bit clear up that rumor. But let's call a spade. He knows who's doing what. Now, was that what that informant said? Was that true that was a fake chase when they told Mark to stay away or whatever? Or was it a light one? Could it have been like, hey, we're not chasing him. We're not treating him like a little boy. Mark was a big boy. He's a big earner. So they're just going to say, hey, man, just skedaddle for a minute or something. Probably something like that. So it wasn't fake, but it wasn't really a chase, whatever. But who knows? I want to know your guys' opinion, because a lot of you guys, my number one crowd that I get is from New York. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to you guys up there. So a lot of you guys are older and know the folklore of these things. So anything I'm saying, please comment if there's another story out there or whatever, and we could discuss it. So anyway, this also ties in that phone call with Angelo Ruggiero, quack, and then the situation with his brother, and then the 8 bricks. So this ties a lot of things together. And this is all, this is what the facts were in court. Now, with this unalive and stuff, like I said, that's what the first one that we talked about was the Billy Bright thing. Now, look, like I said, there's also rumors from people. I didn't hear this from books and stuff like that. That Billy Bright wasn't involved in that. But there's also rumors that he was. There's, you guys know how things are. But now imagine you're Mark and you're sitting there and this guy shows up. And like I told you guys, these penitentiaries are dangerous. You've seen how quick that happened to Billy Bright. You've seen what happened to Joe King. You've seen what happened to these people. They don't care about titles, guys. They don't care who you're with. They don't care. Tommy karate, Tommy could be jujitsu, Tommy could be whatever, but Tommy better be respectful or Tommy's going to get it. And I'm just being serious. I'm not knocking anybody. That goes for all of us. But anyway, so, that was the hard look on Mark for getting out on compassionate release. But now he was, I believe a judge granted him the compassionate release at the end and urged the BOP to release him, which they didn't, and Mark passed away, which is crazy. Big reason for that, there was an FBI agent, some prick, still a prick from 30-some years ago, actually pushed the issue and said he felt in danger if Mark got out. Mark would have something done to him. Listen, man, If that's not the biggest crock of Michael Francese's word, baloney. What wise guy says baloney? But no, if that ain't the biggest crock of baloney there is out there. I mean, Sammy's out here. The Gambino family hasn't had nothing done to him. So what do you think? Mark Ryder's going to come out as a dying man, as he's no longer with us, rest his soul. He should have been home with his family, guys. He wasn't coming after nobody or nothing like that. It's a shame. He always, listen, he wasn't a crybaby. He didn't whine about none of this. Don't ever think that. Now, obviously, he wanted to get out of prison. He kept filing through lawyers and through the right channels. Mark did not cry about none of this. He was a man's man. He was a tough guy. And like I said, from the other things that I heard about, in them books and stuff like that, where Gotti Sr. was going to have Mark whacked, that would have been a bad call, John. That would have been a total. So I can't look at it. But sometimes these things happen. You will assume something about somebody and it'll be the other person or whatever. But we seen what happened in the end. So Mark was a stand-up guy to the end. I hope this time, gets a little flow, share the video, stuff like that. Like I said, we can't push for Mark's compassionate release, unfortunately, because of what happened. He's no longer with us. But, I hope you guys enjoyed this tonight. This tied a few things together for you. And also, I apologize for the dogs. But, they acted up a little bit tonight. It's first day it snowed today. This first time they ever seen snow, so they're a little bit rambunctious, whatever. All right, guys, just remember, until next time, always stand on business.